Hi everyone, we're going to be doing Unit 3B Forestry today. So we're going to start with types of forests, ecosystem services, and deforestation. So we have lots of different types of forests. Boreal forests are those coniferous forests, tropical rainforests we learned a bunch about already. And then we have temperate deciduous forests where we live. You also have temperate rainforests, tropical dry forests, and then woodlands are ecosystems with lower densities of trees. Right? North America, we have a lot of forest. A lot of it can be logged. Almost 70% of it can be logged. About 25% are non-commercial forest types, so they can't be logged, but you can do other things on them. And then about 7% is reserved, like nothing can happen in there. And you can see the largest quantity of forests that we have is from the middle of the country up into the northeast with our temperate deciduous forest. We do have some coniferous forest out in the west as well. So forests cover only about 30% of the Earth's surface, and they provide a huge variety of habitats and niches, and they're an absolutely amazing ecosystem. Most of U.S.'s primary forest or old growth forest has been cut down. Okay, if you look at the picture on the left in 1620, this is the 1620 map. This over here is the 1920 map. Okay. So it's much smaller now, and we've cut down a majority of the forests in the US. Old growth forests are amazing. Climax communities, they're at the end of succession, which we're going to get to in part 3 of this PowerPoint. And basically, they provide a huge ecologically significant habitat, and they have a huge amount of biodiversity. And rainforests are all usually old growth forests, and they're a non-renewable resource. If you cut down an old growth forest with trees that are thousands of years old, literally thousands of years old, you can't plant those and manage them in a sustainable manner. Here is me hugging one of those trees. This is a giant sequoia in Sequoia National Park. And if you see on this one, you can see this black here, that's burn scars. Okay. This is the root system of a tree that fell, but it's only the top little beginning part of it. These trees are absolutely giant and magnificent. So what you're looking at here is General Sherman. You can see it's a bit burnt up here, and then you have some burning right there as well. I was there in 2015, and there had been fires in this area a couple of years before that. But General Sherman, by volume, is the largest known living single stem tree on Earth. And you're like, okay, it's a tree. It doesn't look that big. So to try to put things into perspective for you, these are people right here. Okay. And they're in the background a bit as well. But here you go. These guys right here are people. And this is the tree. And you can't even get the whole tree in a picture. It doesn't work. And pictures don't do justice anyway. If you've ever been there, it's phenomenal. If you haven't, I suggest going at some point in time. Right? So now moving on to rainforests, you have different layers. So if you were to fly over a rainforest, you would see kind of a blanket of green. And what that blanket of green is the canopy. And every so often you're going to see trees poking through, and that's going to be the emergent layer. Okay, so you've got the emergent, the top pokey ones, the canopy, which is the area that is the thick layer, and then you have underneath the canopy that you can't see from above. That's the lower story or the understory, sometimes called. And then you have the ground, okay, or the ground cover area. But rainforests have layers, and they're very important. And they're very important because of how a rainforest rains. These two videos I want you guys to watch. You obviously can't watch them hyperlinked in this presentation, but they are also on the one pager and embedded in the PowerPoint. So make sure you watch them. That brings us to ecosystem services. We are a part of nature, and we can either help it or hinder it. And as we've been seeing, and as you guys saw with David Attenborough's film, we've really not helped it in a lot of great ways. So nature provides 4 key ecosystem services that we can't live without: cultural, regulating, supportive, and provisional. And we're going to go over those. So our cultural services are non-material benefits. All right. This is the, ooh, it's pretty, that aesthetic inspiration, some sort of cultural identity. I'm Greek. Olive trees are a huge part of my culture. You also have a sense of home with, songs and pledges and everything like that. And then you have spiritual experiences like, whole Mother Earth and Wiccan and animism and stuff like that. So this is where tourism and recreation fit in. It's a cultural service. I love going hiking in the woods. I also like identifying trees in the woods, especially this time of year. The trees are gorgeous, changing color, and that's tourism and recreation right there. Then we have regulating services. So this helps maintain the quality of natural resources. Okay, when these services fail, there can be catastrophic effects. So carbon sequestration, taking in carbon through the process of photosynthesis, and then holding it sometimes for thousands of years, maintaining air quality, okay, through the process of photosynthesis and creating oxygen. All right, water quality with wetlands and the whole water cycle, storm mitigation like mangroves protecting against storm surges, and then last but most certainly not least, you have pollination. Bees provide pollination for, I think it's something like 70% of our commercial, like our agricultural crops. And without bees, we don't have so many of our favorite foods, right? So you can see in this picture, you have trees that have an effect on evaporating water, preventing erosion, providing habitats for wildlife. And when these trees are gone, typically what happens is you get a positive feedback loop and not a good positive feedback loop. Okay. Then we come to supporting services. This is the hardest one. This makes sure that all the other services work as well as they do. And your key examples here are habitat for different species and maintenance of genetic diversity. Okay. Also, which is basically just maintaining a diverse array of species. Okay. So without these habitats aren't necessarily providing the oxygen, it's the trees within these habitats. But in order to have these other ecosystem services, you need to have the habitat and the abundant genetic diversity. All right. Provisioning services. This is the one we're most familiar with. This is the actual resources harvested, the tactile physical materials like food, lumber, mineral resources, freshwater, fisheries, medicines. All of these things come from nature. These are provisioning services, and they're hugely important to us. So now on to deforestation. The basic underlying causes for deforestation, and I'm going to start from the bottom, is population growth, human population growth. When we have too many people, what happens is that demand for resources goes up. Okay, our poverty ends up going up. And then you have government policy stepping in. And in a lot of areas, these government policies do not favor the environment and they encourage exports. And overarching, it's people not valuing ecological services. We take for granted the oxygen that we breathe and the organisms that create it for us. The causes of deforestation, these are the secondary causes, but these are the things that are the direct things. Oil drilling, you're taking down trees. Mining, you're taking down trees. Okay, flooding from dams. When you build a dam, this big reservoir forms behind it, and what happens is any forests or trees that were in those areas drown. They're now underwater. Cattle ranching, cash crops, settler farming, you might know it as subsistence agriculture or slash and burn agriculture, where you're basically just kind of farming an area to feed your family. Fires, whether they're set intentionally or not, logging and roads. Okay, so these are the secondary causes of deforestation. Climate change is altering our forests really quickly. US is warming, it's getting drier, it's going to get worse. Then when you have an ecosystem that isn't tip top, it's more susceptible to things like invasive species. Okay. So pests kill huge areas of trees, especially plantations, and we're going to get to that. When it's all the same type of tree, and dead trees don't remove carbon dioxide. This then intensifies climate change. So, what these forests in the future will be replaced with is woodlands, which just are forests with less trees, shrublands, or grasslands can replace these areas. So, we did theory of island biogeography, and we also kind of took that and we threw it over to land. Okay, so what we have here is old growth forest on your left, and they burn and build a highway through this area here. And what ends up happening is you then have plots that get cleared for grazing, you have plots that get cleared for agriculture. Some of these areas are burned, and what happens is this then paves the way for fragmentation, destruction, degradation in that area. Okay. So moving on, we have logging. All right. These are three different harvesting methods: selective cutting, clear cutting, and strip or stand cutting. Selective logging is the best for the ecosystem. Say I want some pecan trees, okay, because I'm going to do some hardwood floors, and pecan is really pretty. And so what they're going to do is they're going to go in, they're going to look for the pecan trees. They'll get people in on the ground, cut it. They make sure that it falls to in such a way that it minimizes the damage to the surrounding younger trees. They want to preserve that ecosystem. And then what happens is they're removed with minimal disturbance, usually with helicopters. And then you have that continual regeneration of young seedlings, whether they're planted or it's just naturally done in the forest. Clear cutting, total and complete opposite, is the you take every single tree in that area. It doesn't matter what it is. So during clear cutting, the understory is destroyed and a new forest of economically desirable trees may be planted. Not always planted though. Okay, so all the trees are removed, and then seedlings of the same species are usually replanted, just like you guys saw with the palm palm oil trees, the palm trees that were replacing the tropical rainforests. So clear cutting, you can see kind of a close up of what it is on the left hand side. It's just stumps that are left. It destroys entire communities. And on the right hand side, this is, excuse me, a picture of an area that's been clear cut on the right. And you can see all the roads cut into that area to transport all of the logs. And then on the left hand side, that's not a shadow. Those are all trees, and it's such a stark difference. Okay, clear cutting has huge effects on ecosystems. So in a nice forest ecosystem service, trees shade the ground. In the cool shade, the decay is slow, so you get those nutrients that actually go into the ground and fertilize the soil with that decomposition, and those trees get to uptake all of these amazing nutrients. Okay, there's minimal surface runoff because it gets caught by the roots and absorbed by all of the roots of the trees. When you clear cut this ecosystem, you lose all of that stuff. You get rapid decay, the soil is more easily eroded, there are no tree roots to suck up a lot of that water, so you have a huge amount of runoff. Okay, so these are just some of the effects of clear cutting on a community. Here's some advantages and disadvantages of clear cutting. Obviously, you're going to have higher timber yields, maximum profits in the shortest amount of time. You can reforest with faster growing trees, and it's good for tree species that need full or moderate sunlight. Okay. However, this reduces biodiversity. It destroys biodiversity. It destroys and fragments wildlife habitats. It increases your water pollution. It increases your flooding. It increases your erosion on steep slopes. And it eliminates, here it says most recreational value, but dude, it's all of the recreational value. No one's going to go to an area just to see stumps. Nobody likes that. All right. So strip cutting is a variation of clear cutting. The trees are cut down in strips narrow enough for forests on either side to reclaim the cleared land. Okay. So after reclamation of 3 to 5 years, the next strip is cut. Okay. So you let these trees grow for 20 to 30 years to mature, and then you can cut that area again. All right. So commercial plantations. These are specifically planted and grown for the production of timber or timber-based products. It's one tree, okay, one type of tree. It's a monoculture. It's usually fast-growing, produces straight, tall trunks, ideal for logging. Okay, so if you see here, these are Monterey pines. It's a very popular commercial timber tree. It's fast growing and it's ready for logging just 20 years after planting. Okay. Plantation forestry is another way to say commercial plantations. And like I said before, fast growing single species, and it's often done after clear cutting primary forest. Okay. So you don't have any biodiversity here. All the trees are the same age, and trees are cut after a certain time. These are crops, they're not ecologically functional forests. Okay. So what happens here is you clear cut this certain area, seedlings are planted, and then what happens is after about 15 years, this is constantly managed. Weak trees are removed so that the other trees can grow, and then what happens is that they're cut again, and every single area is managed in a commercial plantation. So the biggest example we saw of this was palm oil plantation. So Borneo, the biggest island in Indonesia, has lost most of its forest cover. And if you look at this picture down here, in 1950, it was green, and here in 2010, you've got more than 50% of the forest cover removed. And clear cutting encourages further development, illegal logging, and all sorts of other bad things. All right, so that's it for part one. We'll do part two next time.